What if I told you that Shiki will come back in the manga and his resurgence will be very similar to the movie Strong World, but it will just be bigger and better with characters that we have been introduced to recently? Let's get into it. Before moving forward, this video will contain spoilers for Egghead, the arc after Wano, up to chapter 1078. This video will also contain spoilers for the movie Strong World. You have been warned. Please continue if you are so inclined. In chapter 1078 of One Piece, our cover story, The Emotionless Voyage of German 66, volume 33, which is half of 66, might I add, which makes this very significant. We are introduced to the new scientific group of Neo-MADS, formed and now figureheaded by both Vince Judge and Caesar Clown, as they have put aside their differences and have come to the conclusion that everything is just Vegapunk's fault. Which, okay, that's very funny, but what's very interesting is that I think Neo-MADS are going to be hired by Golden Lion Shiki, and he's going to front the research to actually bring a dream that he's been building for 20 years into fruition via their scientific prowess. Now, with that being said, let's talk about Strong World, the movie. One Piece Strong World was released in Japanese theaters on December 12th, 2009. That was over a decade ago. That's crazy, isn't it? Moving on. The plot of that movie is simply this. Shiki, based on his terrible hate of the East Blue, is now fueled to wreak havoc on the East Blue in order to bring the world government to their needs and elicit a response from the world government via unleashing his gaggle of mutated animals on the East Blue. Now, does any of that matter for the manga? Yes, because with the release of the movie, a manga chapter accompanied it. It is called Chapter 0. Chapter 0 has a lot of very interesting information in it, but the important stuff that we want to focus on today are a few pages. Specifically the last page where we see Shiki looking over a landscape. That landscape is called Maryville, also known as the land hidden in the clouds, okay? It is a land, a gaggle of islands, a floating archipelago that is influenced by Shiki's float abilities. On that island, we also see the fauna that we see in the movie, specifically Fat Lion. Because Fat Lion is here, we can also conclude that the flora that made Fat Lion is also canon. That flora is called IQ. And because IQ is here and Dr. Indigo is here, whom is a cohort of Shiki and his closest ally from what we see, seeing as how he's here as well, we can also conclude that SIQ exists, which is the mutagen that made all the animals super mutants in the first place. So we have IQ that sort of pushed their evolution, and then we have SIQ, which accelerated it. With that being said, let's go over how Neo-MADS plays into this. If you made it this far, why don't you drop a like? And if you really like it, why don't you drop a subscribe? I would greatly appreciate it. Also want to give a shout out to my moderator, KMDP, on my Discord, the Digital Burrow, because it is our conversations that fueled this theory to even manifest. So, Digital Burrow is a great place for One Piece talk because it leads to cool videos like this. And with that being said, let's talk about Judge and Caesar, the two known members of Neo-MADS. What's so interesting about Caesar Clown in this situation is that the practical application of the research done by Vegapunk and Vince Judge in the lineage factor led to the creation of SAD. What's interesting too is that SAD, which creates Smile, is just basically the idea of IQ and SIQ in reverse, because SAD is a substance that has been injected into flora in order to create devil fruits, right? Artificial devil fruits. However, with IQ and SIQ, IQ is a flower. It's an existing piece of flora that is then changed into a compound, which is called SIQ. And that compound is given to animals to mutate them. So in one case, we have a chemical being injected into flora in order to create a result. In the other situation, we have flora being broken down into a chemical in order to create another result. The interesting thing, too, about these two results is that they kind of lead to the same destination, which is enhancing an individual. One via devil powers, which are those of animals, and the other is enhancing the natural ability of animals, making them more ferocious through mutation. So they parallel in a very odd and interesting way. With that being said, I think moving forward with the announcement of MADS headed by Caesar Clown and Judge, they might need funding, because that was the problem that they had when MADS first started. They were funded by Duffield, and that's also the current problem Vegapunk is having himself, because even though he's funded by the world government, he still can't do all that he wants to do. So I think the benefactor that will boost Neo-MADS up, seeing as how the German kingdom is no longer a part of the world government, and seeing as how Caesar has broken all the bridges, burnt all the bridges between Big Mom and Kaido and whatnot, and Kaido most likely is dead, but perhaps he's not. Anyway, the point is, he has no more benefactors, and Judge is basically out of luck because he's no longer part of the world government. Therefore, they're going to need a benefactor. I think that benefactor is going to be the Golden Lion Nishiki, because over the years he's been stockpiling wealth, presumably, in order to make this plan come true. So when discussing the roster of Neo-MADS, we're going to go down theorizing lane a little bit, but I want you to stay with me. Okay, so obviously we have the two who created the organization, Caesar Clown and Vince Judge. Now, with that being said, this is going to be dependent on how Egghead is going to turn out. Based on Jessie York's prominence in Egghead and seeing as how she's spearheading all the events that are going on there right now, I don't think she's actually going to die in this arc. I think the survivors of the Vegapunks in this arc are going to be Vegapunk himself, also known as the Stella, Vegapunk York, and Vegapunk Lilith. I think Vegapunk York is going to weasel her way out of the calamity that's going to transpire on Egghead Island, and it's going to end up on the doorstep of Vince Smoke Judge and Caesar Clown. She's going to explain whom she is, and that's automatically going to give her entry into Neo-MADS, because she, like Vince Smoke Judge and Caesar Clown, has presumably a problem with Stella, the original Vegapunk, because as I said in so many videos before, she is underappreciated for her genius. She is seen by Vegapunk and the other Vegapunk satellites as a stomach and a rectum. She has no value other than to provide energy and to remove waste. So she can sympathize with the plights of Vince Smoke Judge and Caesar, because she has the same sort of history with Vegapunk. With that being said, I do think they will be picked up by a benefactor in Shiki the Golden Lion. Therefore, seeing as how Dr. Indigo is heavily associated with him, and seeing as that he is canon, he too will join the research group of MADS. Lastly, I think through some sort of circumstance, don't know how this will play out, but based on Shiki being the first known escapee of Impel Down, he might have somehow, some way obtained or knows from memory how the prison is constructed. So he'll either hire a team or go in himself in order to retrieve Queen. The reason why I'm focusing on Queen is because just based on his presence in this cover story, he's been given a lot more than practically any other character in Kaido's organization. Not even King has given this much credit, because King's contribution really is just his genes for the Seraphim Project, and that's kind of where his character starts and ends, quite honestly. So Queen has been the focal point of the Wano arc for a lot of it, and his importance just increased as time went on. So based on his showings there and his showings in our cover story, The Emotionless Voyage of Germa 66, I'm going to conclude that somehow, some way, the boys are going to break him out of prison and he's going to be a part of Neo-MADS as well. With that being said, let's go down theorization lane a little bit further and discuss what I think Shiki might be doing this time around, canonically in the manga. Based on the context we are given about Rocksteady Zebek, we know that he wants to become King of the World. King of the World seems to be kind of different from King of the Pirates because we know King of the Pirates is just the freest man in the world. What the King of the World might entail of, we are unsure, but it's something that has to have something to do with control or freedom through controlling everybody else. So keeping that in mind, the former Rocks Pirates that we know of don't seem to share that exact ambition. They're all kind of various corruptions of that ambition. So with that in mind, one Rocks pirate has to have that same ambition as the captain. I think that Rocks pirate is Shiki the Golden Lion, because Shiki has always been portrayed to be a smart, conniving sort of character, somebody who goes in and obtains resources and plots and schemes. And we see at the end of chapter 0 that he's plotting something that he's going to put into motion after 20 years have passed. So that lets us know that he is the type of character to carry such an ambition. So with that being said, what do I think he's going to do? I think he's going to use the smarts of Neo-MADS, combining the properties of the Smile and SIQ together to create an army of chimeras, super mutated animals with the powers of other animals, in order to create an army of chimeras that would be the equivalent of an ancient weapon. You see, he doesn't necessarily need to find an ancient weapon if he has a brilliant team that can make him a force that is the equivalent of an ancient weapon. And this has been a story point that's been in a few movies, namely Film Z. So it would be appropriate for this to be a plot point in the manga at some point in the future. So that's what I think. I think Shiki is going to be the benefactor of Neo-MADS and is going to task them with the operation of making this army of chimeras that will wreak havoc upon the world, giving him control and making him king of the world. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like stuff like this, please feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Polipede Works. And if you like what you see, I would appreciate your subscription. Thank you so much. See you next time.